Today, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Emma. Now, Emma's worked in education for over 20 years as a secondary school teacher, a mentor, a trainer, helping young people find confidence and their voice. We first met through Talk the Talk, an educational charity that we both work for that helps young people build communication skills through public speaking. Over the years, Emma and I have bonded over our shared experiences of growing up, anxiety, all the mental health stuff. And those honest chats have been a big part of our healing. We've learned to laugh at the chaos and find a bit of comedy in the tragedy, which I think is such a powerful part of recovery. So Emma, you once sent me a quote that really stuck with me. The one that you said nearly made you crash your car. Do you remember?
That's it, yeah. I was listening to another podcast.
Yeah.
Not yours.
No. And thanks for that. And you shouldn't be texting whilst driving as well. So say that.
For any police listening, I was not texting while driving. I'd pulled over.
You
I
did
was
pull
getting
over.
petrol. Yeah, I
Good.
wouldn't text while I was driving, Joe.
I hope not.
Nor would you.
Yeah, because this is a podcast for young people.
Exactly.
And that's a bad impression to give out. So the quote was from Stephen Gross, and he said, "When we can't find a way to tell our story tells us." And I think that's such a great way to start this conversation and why it matters so much, because I think when we're struggling, especially in, the sort of traumatic times, it's often to do with our past, right? And we are a collection of our thoughts, our opinions, the things that people say to us, our beliefs, the things we say to ourselves. And unless we sort all that stuff out, we tend to live life based on our story. And I think as soon as you tell your story and you get it out, I mean, for me, as soon as I asked for help and I had that outlet to go, I'm really struggling, it's at that point I started to begin the healing process from anxiety. So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us.
That's
And
all right.
I just want to say it's brilliant to have you here. And I know you've had like mixed feelings about this conversation. You've been umming and ahhing about it.
Yeah.
But I think what you've got to share with people is really going to resonate. So thanks for being here.
Well, it's a funny process because I agreed to it readily, when I told you my story and you said this could be a podcast. And I said, yes, sure. But I didn't anticipate the sort of fear and inner conflict in the run up to it. It's a big thing. What I take from that quote that you talked about telling our story, it's not just any old story, is it? It's the sort of story we want to kind of keep hidden, like maybe the more difficult experiences we've had, certainly maybe mental health issues we've had. These are kind of things that we don't tend to want to share. And it made me think that the most powerful episodes you had in season 1 were the ones where people were telling difficult stories about themselves or revealing parts of themselves that we tend to want to keep hidden. So there was Megan, that was such a powerful episode, who talked so candidly and openly about the difficulties she had when both of her parents died. I thought that was such a powerful episode. And then Daisy, like towards the end of season 1, where she was talking openly about her problems with anxiety, something else people tend to want to keep hidden, stories about mental health or challenges, inner challenges they have. But then I think one of the most powerful episodes actually was one where you did on your own, and you told the story about you getting stabbed and then the quite huge mental health challenges you faced in the aftermath. And I thought, gosh, that was so brave. It was so courageous and it made me see a different side to you because, I sort of know you as a colleague and, you're this brilliant presenter, stand-up comic. Stand-up comedy to me is one of the most brave things human beings could do. I couldn't do it. No way. But this, like that episode was a different kind of courage to me. That was you sitting in a room on your own, telling your story, vulnerable story, recording it and putting it out into the world, not knowing what the consequences were. And I've never asked you this before because, we've had quite a lot of conversations since you started this podcast. I've never asked you this before, but I just wonder, like, what was the process leading up to that, leading up to, creating this podcast, but also revealing so much of yourself? That must have been difficult, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd already done it in a therapy room sort of 15 years before. So I'd been able to process and metabolize a lot of the stress and the trauma. And I sort of parked it for a bit. And then, I was able just to sort of, live a fairly normal life. And then when it came around to seeing the problem with anxiety in schools and seeing it as such an issue, and when we do our workshops, the young people are like, oh, I've got anxiety and I can't do it because of anxiety. Like, whoa, there's clearly a thing here, and I've been through this, and actually I might be able to help out with a few ideas. But I think the thing for me was not necessarily revealing that I got stabbed and making myself vulnerable in that way because I'd already dealt with it. It was actually doing a podcast.
Okay.
And then actually, from a creative point of view, like sitting here now, you know, I don't have it because I've already been through season 1, but I have massive imposter syndrome. You know, why should you be doing a podcast on mental health? You know, you're not
You're not a
you're not a
psychotherapist or
psychotherapist. I've done a degree in psychology, but I've got lived experience, 20
Mhm.
years of going through the Maudsley in South East London, of, you know, a lot of other things that have come out recently with like the ADHD diagnosis as
Mhm.
well. So I feel I've got a lot to say about it, and I've got
Mm.
a good connection with young kids, and we see it in the
Mm.
workshops that
For
when we
sure.
talk about on the side in our communication skills workshops, when we talk about anxiety and the fear of public speaking,
Mm.
that's when the students really like come alive and they're like, oh wow, tell me more, because this is the elephant in the room that no one talks
Absolutely.
about.
And I think you and I, sort of unbeknownst to each other, you really have a similar approach because
Yeah.
I'm similar to you. I'll tell my story in a bit, but it's a 20-year journey with anxiety for me. And I noticed the same things in my workshops. The more I revealed about myself and my inner world and my own struggles, you get these wonderful moments of recognition from teenagers around you where they go, what you standing up there,
Yeah.
you struggle with anxiety. And I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
you have moments like that same when
Yeah.
you're delivering your workshops. And so both of us have kind of evolved this section of it
Mm,
where we're really kind of unpicking, what these emotions feel like, what
mm,
stops us from wanting to speak out and get up and speak publicly,
yeah.
and all the inner challenges, that inner voice that comes up and tells us not to reveal stuff, not to put ourselves out there. We all have that. And
Mm,
I think if we as adults reveal that about ourselves, it just opens the
mm.
door to other people.
Well, the inner voice for me was the thing that really got on top of me. And that's the
Mm.
thing that I've been able to manage and understand, because I honestly thought that I was the only one in the world with this crazy little voice inside the back of my
Mm.
head telling me that I was a piece of shit, telling me that I
Mm.
wasn't good enough, telling me that everyone's judging me. You know, I
Oh, we've all got it, Joe.
honestly thought that I was going mental,
Mm.
and no one was talking about it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how often do you go up to your mates and go,
Can you hear this
have you
voice?
got a little voice inside your head that like tells
It
you,
beats you up,
yeah, that beats
bullies
you up all
you.
the time? Yeah. It just wasn't I mean, I guess I wouldn't have had a problem saying it, but it's just something that
Dealing
would
with it.
seem so crazy to say.
Mm.
And then it wasn't until, I went into therapy and said, I'm really struggling. I need some help. I've got this voice inside my head. I think I'm going crazy. I think I'm, mental. Thought I was schizophrenic, which
Mm.
isn't having a voice inside your head.
Mm.
But they were like, oh, no, everyone's got one of those. I was like, what? Well, everyone's got a voice inside their head that tells them that they're not very
Yeah.
good. Oh, yeah. There's a name for that. They're called,
Inner
cognitive
critic.
distortions or thinking errors. And I was like, all right, because, I always think negatively about things, and, I always predict the future and think it's going to be bad. It's like, yeah, there's a name for that: catastrophizing, black and white thinking, mind
Yeah,
reading. And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what? And she gave me a handout, and I was like, it was the first time in my life where I was like, hallelujah, I'm not mental.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite normal.
Think how many years you were carrying that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the important thing. I think, we talk about inner critic in our workshops,
yeah.
don't we? And this relief that you see, in kids' faces.
Mm,
It's like, really? Everyone's
mm,
got that?
yeah,
It's really powerful stuff. But
yeah.
that episode where you revealed so much about yourself, I think in a way, that ignited our friendship
Mm,
because what you did by talking, I thought it, you talk about it as though it was nothing. I thought it was huge when you talked about PTSD and OCD because
yeah.
people don't want to reveal that kind of stuff about themselves.
Mm,
I thought it was huge. But when you did that, what you did is you opened the door to me. I was lucky enough to work with you. I knew you and I was able to go up and say, Joe, I've been there.
yeah.
I've been on my knees with anxiety. I've been through some difficult stuff. And then suddenly this whole vista opened up where we could suddenly have these really genuine, like nourishing, helpful conversations.
Mm,
And we'd been kind of living this kind of parallel experience for a good 20 years where
yeah.
we'd been struggling with anxiety, trying different therapies, reading all the books, and, arrived in the place where we both are now, which is, just this keenness to help other
Mm,
people take what we've learned and help young people in particular deal with this really common problem. Anxiety is like the number one
mm,
mental health problem in the UK today,
yeah.
especially among young people. And, if you and I have experienced this, we know what it's like. That's just in itself so reassuring for young
Mm,
people to go, like, I know what it feels like. And
yeah.
we've been at the sharp end of it. We've been on our knees with it,
Yeah.
and in other iterations of it over the years too. And
Yeah.
we still have to work on it every day. You and I both have practices that we use every day to keep ourselves regulated.
Yeah.
We've got toolkits,
Yeah.
the toolkit that you put on the end of your episodes and so on is so useful
Yeah.
for people because it's something you live with and
Yeah.
manage. and walk alongside,
Mm.
and it's really important that we talk about it.
Yeah. And we were
So
talking about the other day, weren't we, about how we spent years trying to push it away or trying
huge.
to chop anxiety down by using different
Mm-hmm.
techniques and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, running, like, I've run
Mm-hmm.
4 marathons, I've done 6 half marathons. And when I look back, it's not like I wanted to run a marathon. It was like I was running just
Outrunning
to, I was
anxiety.
trying to outrun anxiety. I was trying to get
Mm.
rid of it. I was trying to push it away.
Mm.
And it did help to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent because, when you run, you feel good, but then it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the sort of biggest change for me was when I stopped fighting it and I just allowed it to
Yeah.
be there, not just the feelings, but the thoughts as well.
Yeah.
And then bringing in that awareness of just watching these ridiculous thoughts that come through your head every single
Mm-hmm.
day.
No,
And
they're
just,
not true.
and yeah, they're not true. They're a part of you, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just your little brain trying to keep you alive, keep you safe in a
Mm.
really bad way by
Mm-hmm.
telling you all sorts of stories just to like keep you small.
Yep.
It doesn't mean to do it. It thinks it's protecting you.
Overprotective.
Overprotective, yeah.
But my journey's similar, when you talk about how you've evolved from fighting it to embracing it. Like, I've got two stories to tell. Like, one story is going to be the story that I kind of kept hidden for a long time. I had some difficult things happen in childhood that definitely, I think, link to problems with anxiety downstream. I've had enough therapy to join the dots, between those two things. But then I've also got a story about anxiety, which is my evolving relationship with it.
Yeah.
That it's gone from, me being terrified of it, like you. At one time, the only technique I had was running.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to outrun it and all.
Yeah.
And then learning all the techniques, but kind of fighting it to the place where I am now, where I just fully embrace it.
Mm.
And then weirdly, I'm really grateful to anxiety. I'm really glad I had
Mm.
it because it's helped me in so many ways, but I'm in a really good place with it now.
Mm.
But it was about my evolving relationship with it too, like embracing it, accepting it, working alongside it. It's with me today.
Mm.
I brought anxiety with me today. It's sitting on this chair with
Yeah,
me right
yeah,
now.
yeah. But you're living with
And
it.
it's something you live alongside.
Yeah.
It's part of me. So there's like an origin story, as I say, and things don't really make sense in terms of anxiety unless I tell the origin story. And by the way, just as a caveat, to prepare for this interview, I've had to condense like 49 years of life into like 49 minutes with a through line of anxiety. And I'm aware that it makes my life sound like one long panic attack. And it wasn't like that. There was really good stuff in and amongst. I've got like great kids, great friends, done loads of traveling, but I know you don't want to hear about that. Certainly not on this podcast. So I think I'll just crack on with the miserable stuff, shall I?
Yeah. No, I think that's good to say though, because I want the podcast to be a celebration of anxiety. This isn't like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, it will be in
anxiety's...
the end.
No, it is, because you've already said that it's actually served you. And
Oh, there's a happy ending to
Yeah.
all this. Bear with it. Bear
Yeah.
with the misery, I'd say to listeners. Don't just switch off going, oh, here she goes, trauma dumping
yeah,
and whatever else. It does end well.
good.
But yeah, I was aware when I looked at it all, like it just looks like one long panic attack. But anyway, so my story starts in childhood. It is still something quite difficult to talk about because it's a story I kept hidden for quite a long time for fear that it just meant, that I wasn't the same as everyone else. But I've had quite an unusual experience. So although people can't guess from my accent, I'm actually Australian. I was born in Australia. My father's Australian. My mother went over as a 10-pound pom in the 60s. I was born in Melbourne. And I lived in Australia for the first 7 years of my life. We left Melbourne, lived on a farm somewhere called Little River. And I was the eldest of 3 daughters. And my memories of that time are pretty idyllic, really. Australia's just like this wonderful, free, beautiful country, great weather. I used to ride my bike to the local school. I had a great relationship with my dad. We lived on a farm. It's pretty idyllic. But when I turned 7, our lives did a bit of a 180. And this is where the difficult stuff starts happening. So my parents, seemingly, to me, from my memory, went through a very sudden, acrimonious divorce. Like suddenly, they seemed to just hate each other.
Mm.
And not long after that, my mother told us, "Okay, we're gonna go on holiday to Wales. Me and my 2 sisters. We're gonna go on holiday to Wales." And
Which is quite sad to hear in itself, isn't it?
well, maybe alarm bells should have rung. That's not a holiday destination as such, really. And so, off we went. But I remember being at the airport and just not feeling things were quite right. Like my instincts were like, there's no holiday vibe here. This doesn't really feel like a holiday. And I remember feeling quite scared. And my instincts were right because it transpired actually that my mother had a one-way ticket and we'd left Australia for good. And she hadn't told us. And I didn't get to say goodbye to my dad. I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends or my school. So it was, it was a tough thing. Looking back now, that little 7-year-old trying to navigate that was tough. And our lives kind of went into disarray for a good while. We had nowhere to live. We didn't have much money. We were living in sort of relatives' spare bedrooms for a bit. We weren't in school. And I was just trying to navigate this all on my own. My mum was, understandably stressed and kind of inaccessible. She was quite, I don't know how I'd cope bringing up 3 kids where you got no fixed address and whatever else. But, we couldn't really talk about Australia or my father without her getting angry or dysregulated or whatever. And so it was something I had to kind of navigate alone. Now, at the time, I didn't realize how important it was. But what did happen is my father, bless him, because this was a shock to him. He'd lost 3 kids overnight. He used to send a lot of letters. This is pre-internet, pre-mobile phones, pre-email. So lots of handwritten letters. And I realized now how important those were. Like I used to keep them in my little Midland bank file and file them away. And he also, rather heartbreakingly, used to send cassettes. So like cassettes of his voice telling us what was going on in his life, or like bedtime stories that he would read us that I could play so I could listen to him. So it was like, I look back on that now and it's just so heartbreaking, but also like such an unusual experience. I thought there's no one around me that has this experience. And because the message from my mum was like, don't talk about it, then I took it on myself to not talk about it. And I didn't really talk about it for a long, long time. We just kind of cracked on with things. Eventually, like we did find somewhere to live. It was in quite a deprived area of Cardiff and the local school was not great. So the decision was to send us to a Welsh speaking school. So then I had to learn a new language on top of everything else. Like I was like, come on. Which I did. I learned to speak Welsh. My mum had a brief relationship with a man, but that didn't last. But she did get pregnant, and so there was my half brother was in the mix. So it was, we were a single parent family, 4 kids, and really not much money. We were on free school meals, and back in the 90s, free school meals was not a discreet thing. Like you had to queue up outside the secretary's office in break time. All the poor kids lose their break, queue up, get your ticket. And if you lost it, you didn't have any lunch. And then you'd have to sort of publicly hand it to the dinner lady who'd give you a sympathetic look, a couple of extra chips, that kind of thing. There were times where we didn't even have a TV, Sorry, we sound a bit like the Bob Cratchit's family now, but a bit like didn't even have TV. And, pre-internet phones, no gaming consoles, We think overstimulation's a problem then. Try massive understimulation. Like I used to sit and read the encyclopedia, like just to bide the time. We used to live near this motorway bridge that went over, a motorway. And we used to just go and spit on cars for fun, It's like, proper little working class urchins.
Yeah, I used to have apples. Apples.
Well, at least you could afford apples.
Well, there you go. That's the middle class life.
There we go. And where'd you throw your apples
Granny
at?
Smiths at VWs.
Oh, right. Oh,
Yeah,
VWs.
Yeah. Well,
those cars.
Just those. Yeah.
Wow.
Take the Germans.
What's
off
your
the
hump? Oh, right. Anyway, those are the big events. And I guess any therapist would look at that now, and has done actually, and thought, right, okay, abduction, grief, divorce, poverty, that's going to cause problems downstream. And they probably would have, and it did. Our childhoods do impact us later on. And maybe I would have suffered from anxiety anyway. I don't know, but
There's
I
no
think
pastoral support back then in schools like there
not
is now.
really.
Was there anyone going, look, Emma, I can see from your file you've had a bit of a tricky time. Do you want to come and have a chat about it?
No, there wasn't that. And actually, what was so striking about Megan and Daisy's episodes was all the people around them.
Yeah.
The pastoral leaders, the care workers, foster parents.
Yeah, the care now that they've got in schools.
Yeah.
It's still like underfunded,
of course,
under-resourced, but compared to back in your day, it's a lot better, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Things couldn't have happened any other way because they didn't. I don't know what things would have been like if I'd had sort of wraparound care at school. But I did like school. I was quite academic. It was a safe place for me once I was in. It was somewhere where, it was predictable. And if you do well at school academically, it's an okay place to be. So I got a lot of validation that way. When I think about my story of anxiety, in my head, I always thought, well, it kicked in when I was in my early 30s. That's
Mm.
the story I was carrying. But when I was preparing for this podcast, I thought, well, maybe it kicked in much sooner because there's this other kind of anxiety that's not really seen as problematic. And I don't know if you experience this. My hunch is that you do. And it's the kind of anxiety that kind of gives you this engine, this like drive that really propels you to just work really hard.
Yeah.
I wonder if you, because
Oh,
you're a real grafter.
yeah.
Like you're
High
such a
function
grafter.
anxiety. I mean,
Do you
that's
think
why.
that's behind, you
Yeah,
know?
without a doubt. I mean, also as well, slightly different brain, dysregulated in dopamine, doing stuff like stand-up comedian, doing this. Like my brain thrives on it,
Okay.
but also I get incredibly sensitive to rejection as well. So,
Okay.
you go and do a gig and, it goes great, amazing, you feel
I don't know how
fantastic.
you do it.
And then, there's plenty that have gone badly and you just take that so personally. But then
Wow.
in order to get that back or feel any sense of normality, you just need to keep performing. It's a
Go
bit
back.
like a drug
Wow.
to a certain extent. But yeah, without a doubt, I think anxiety has helped me so much to propel me forward and achieve, all the things I wanted to. But it's when it gets out of control
Yep.
and when
Have
it
you ever
tips.
burnt out?
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh, really?
Burn out most weeks doing the job we do, Emma, doing a bit of talk about transition. It's like, yeah, most weeks I burn out.
Because that's the downside of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like high functioning anxiety is just,
yeah.
being overproductive. It can lead to burnout. And I've had times like that. I
And
think.
also doing so many different things quite well. Like that's why with
Mhm.
this project, Anxiety Uncovered, I'm like trying to dedicate my life just to do this one thing really well, rather than do
Mm.
7 things quite well, because
Aw.
I've got about those amount of things going on.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's
yeah.
that sort of FOMO of like, well, if I don't do that, then
Mm.
I'm going to miss out on that. And then, yeah, but I need to keep that going. And that's, I think, what's held me back. But now I understand more about it.
Mm.
I'm like, all right, okay, I recognize. Still a little bit skeptical about ADHD, to be honest. And when I
Mm.
got officially assessed, spent hundreds of pounds on the assessment. It took me months to actually open the report. The first episode of season 2 is going to be me talking about that, but I'm still very skeptical about it. I think there's a lot of shame attached to it.
Mhm.
But when you read about it, I'm like, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me.
Okay.
Self-medicating through gambling when you were like 9 years old. Yeah, that's definitely me.
Wow.
And now when I look back, I'm like, well, yeah, it served me a lot. It's helped me hyper focus on certain things to, achieve a lot of my dreams of playing the London Comedy Store, which was like, right, I'm going to do that.
Wow.
Whatever, I'm going to do it. And that's what this brain allows you to do. It allows you to focus on one thing and just go for it.
Okay.
Very much like, that's why they say people with ADHD, they're very good in a crisis, because it's just about solving
Oh
problems.
gosh, maybe I've got ADHD now.
Yeah, well,
It's
we all
chiming a
have.
bit.
Everyone's got it, haven't they? That's why it's a bit
Seems
like,
like it. Yeah. Oh, you as well. All
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's interesting because good in a crisis, I recognize, and the sort of, drive and over. But I wonder whether this kicked in when I was about 14, because actually what happened to me around that age is I kind of looked around me and I thought, right, we've got no money, quite a difficult relationship with my mother. And I just thought, the only person that's going to get me out of this is me.
Mm.
And from that age, I just worked and worked. I was such a nerd at school. I was just, hanging around the library. I just worked so hard at school. And alongside that, I had part-time jobs, but not just a Saturday job. I would do 4 or 5 shifts a week, first down the local pub as a pot washer, like washing dishes, then as a waitress, then as a barmaid, all through my education. I'd like work quite a lot of shifts part-time on the
That was
side.
at 14.
14 onwards. Like, so I
Yeah.
started a pot washer
So like
and then I
illegally
carried on.
working.
Well, back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on in.
Yeah. Come on in, cash in hand under the table, brown envelope.
Yeah.
£2.50
Maybe I was
an hour I
15.
was getting.
Maybe I was 15. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
my first job was,
is
16.
it meat
No,
factory? Is that
no,
not the meat
that
factory?
came after I got sacked
Alright.
from the meat factory for eating meat on the factory floor.
Raw meat?
No, it was packed. It was the stuff for like Marks and Spencer's.
Oh, right. Oh, nice meat. Posh. Posh meat.
Posh meat, yeah. So I'd go off into the blast chiller and have a little bit of a Marks and Spencer's ham. Just tasting it for just checking. It was all right.
So
yeah, I got
funny.
sacked from that. And yeah, but before that, it was, I used to work for my dad on a farm, sort of cash in hand, labour from, I had chickens when I was like 12. So I used to go sell eggs around the village, which was pretty
Oh,
cool.
bless you.
Yeah. But the first official job was Italian restaurant in Boston, Lincolnshire, pot washing.
Pot washing too.
£2.50 an hour.
I can't remember how much I got paid, but
Yeah.
I don't know if the pay was better in Wales. I don't know. Wales up north. I don't know. It's probably around the same, isn't it? And that graft kind of paid off. Like,
Yeah.
I paid for all my own driving lessons, bought my own car when I was 17. And I thought, that's not That's not
That's
small.
pretty cool. That's amazing. Like starting
Yeah.
work at 14
Yeah.
and, coming from a family that didn't have much
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like
yeah.
buy your own
I mean,
car.
I'm no Oprah Winfrey, Joe, but you know,
Yeah. Well, I
you
mean,
know,
look where we are.
I've got a car.
One
Um,
day we'll get Oprah on.
yeah, yeah. Oh, well, you never know. No, I mean, I guess it was anxiety driven because I knew there was no safety net. There was no sort of financial safety net. I knew I needed to get out of there. And I got 11 GCSEs at A star, A, B. I got good GCSEs, A levels, and got to university to study English,
Mm.
and for someone on free school meals, that statistically, that's a bit against the odd. No, I'm no Oprah
Do you think
Winfrey.
anxiety was driving that
For
though?
sure.
Yeah.
Looking back,
Mm.
preparing for this podcast, I look back on it and I think, gosh, it served me. If I think about it in a certain way, I could say, well, maybe anxiety kind of lifted me out of poverty.
Mm.
Maybe I can be grateful for it in that way because it was certainly this drive. It was certainly this engine propelling me forward, and it's kind of always been there since. So, I just wonder whether I have anxiety to thank for that as well. When I left university, I just sort of looked for where in the world I could earn the most money as an English teacher, and it was Japan, and so I got a job in Tokyo and went over to
Mm.
Tokyo, lived there for a couple of years, and things were, and then came back to this country, got married, became a qualified teacher and everything, and and the plan was kind of working. I was, if I didn't talk about my childhood or the difficult stuff and just cracked on,
Mm.
I thought, well, actually, I'm fine,
Mm.
but it doesn't kind of work like that.
Mm.
The stuff you suppress
Yeah.
comes back. And anxiety, the problematic kind of anxiety, the kind of disordered kind, if we like, kicked in my early 30s, around the time I had kids. About 7 years when my kids were little.
Mm.
As I say, I wasn't living like, in a permanent panic attack,
No.
but it was almost like falling through a trapdoor. Like
Mm.
I'd be totally fine,
Mm.
capable Emma,
Yeah.
easygoing, laugh things off Emma. But then I kind of fall through a trapdoor here and there with anxiety in different forms, like postnatal anxiety after my daughter was born, panic attacks.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'd go through like periods of having, 2 or 3 panic attacks a day, then they would go. I'd be lifted out of the trapdoor again,
Mm.
or health anxiety.
Mm.
And I would just fall down these holes. I'd be okay for a year, and then I'd fall down again,
Mm.
and then I'd be okay again. It was a very sort of rapid in and out with anxiety. And when I think back, those were the worst years because I had no knowledge. All I did was run it off. Hadn't read anything about it. Hadn't really been to therapy or found help, and I was living in fear of it. I was living in fear of anxiety coming back whenever because I never knew when it would come. And that's the worst place, when I reflect now, that's the worst place you can be in with anxiety is to be scared of it.
Yeah.
If you're scared of being scared, that is no way to live.
Mm.
But it's totally understandable because anxiety is fear. And it's terrifying to be in it. It's terrifying when you're in these panic attacks are terrifying. It's terrifying when you're in them. So it makes sense to be scared of anxiety. But the work is changing a relationship with it so that you're not scared of it
Yeah.
anymore. So my daughter reached about the age of 7, and that's where I couldn't bear living like it anymore. I thought, I can't live like this anymore. I need help. And I sought out a private psychotherapist, someone who lived nearby. And we talked the other day, didn't we, about how hard it is to find a good therapist. You've got to really search around
Yeah.
and and there's a lot to be said. I've always found if that first session goes well, that's what I go with. But I've had times where I've tried therapists and my gut feeling has been a no.
Yeah.
But you've got to be discerning. If people are looking for therapists, you've got to be discerning because
Yeah.
it's got to be a right fit. It's a relational
Yeah.
therapy. So we all get along with different people. We're different people with different people.
But I know people that have had therapy and it's taken them a lot to go in there and they have 1 or 2 sessions and they're like,
That's not for me.
not for me because they actually don't connect with that person. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, but maybe they just weren't the right person. So just keep trying because there is someone out there that will get you. And
It's
will,
so hard,
will
isn't
connect
it? It's so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is about finding the right one because there are some brilliant people out there. There's also quite a few charlatans. It's quite an unregulated profession, But the opening session of with this therapist, she was just asking me how old my kids were, just as a sort of information gathering thing. And she said to me, "And so, what was your life like when at the time my daughter was 7, my son was 4?" And she said to me, so what was your life like when you were 7? And I thought, well, what's that got to do with it? I'm 31, I'm 37 now. What's that got to do with anything? And she said, well, you wouldn't, it's more than coincidence that people come into therapy when their child reaches the age that they were when they went through difficult stuff. And I said, yeah, actually, I was 7 when my childhood pretty much ended, you know? And that was the beginning of me telling my story and the beginning of some really good years, actually. I sat and told my story to the therapist in its entirety, and that is processing. It's
Yeah.
one type of processing. It's a time where I just learned a lot. Like I learned a lot of techniques, a lot of the techniques that you share with your podcast on your takeaways. A lot of those I'd learned back then, and I started reading a lot. I started doing yoga, learned about meditation, and all this stuff kind of worked for a while. I mean, I'd still have the odd trapdoor, but not as frequent as I used to before. And so I felt like I was getting a handle on it. I felt like things were going okay until they weren't. I'm very conscious of this, like misery reel that I'm talking you
This is a
through.
celebration, a gift
In the end, it
to help
is.
other people. That's
It
what
is.
you're doing.
In the end, it is. So you can be doing really well with anxiety and think you've got it under control. And then you can relapse. And about 4 years ago, I relapsed really badly. I have never experienced anxiety like that. And what can trigger a relapse is a big life event. So 4 years ago, I'd been married to a lovely man for, 15 years, but our marriage came to an end in a very amicable, friendly way. We're still good friends. We're still allies. It was the antithesis of my parents' divorce. And yet something started bubbling up inside me. And, we can draw parallels again. My parents' divorce marked the beginning of a period of like real lack of safety for me. And often the past can hijack the present. And it felt maybe like that was what was happening. I don't know for sure, but, something was happening. And this anxiety was just absolutely debilitating. Like I couldn't work, couldn't function. I'd never felt such fear. And I was kind of out of it for about 2 months, really. It was such a difficult time. I mean, you could call it a nervous breakdown. You could call, I don't know, whatever it was. But it was one almighty trapdoor. And after that, after I recovered, and weirdly with me with anxiety, with episodes, I can drop, it can come along really suddenly, but then I can come out of it really suddenly too with
But
me.
what is it? So in that time, you can't go to work, 2 months, you're out. I remember it. You took some time out.
Yeah.
What was going through your head? Was it the thoughts that were getting on top of you? Was it the feeling in your body? Was it self-defeating? Was it a voice that was
It
just
felt
trying to
uncontrollable.
what was uncontrollable?
This feeling of fear.
It was a feeling.
Yeah. So I remember I could feel all the cortisol going through my body. I could feel that. I just started to not be able to make decisions, not be able to sleep. These are kind of classic things, with a mental health episode. You can't sleep, can't make decisions, can't. But the way I can describe it maybe is through a metaphor. If you just, if you imagine like you driving a car, it felt like anxiety had the wheel, and all the other aspects of my personality were like gagged and like locked in the boot, like capable Emma, easygoing Emma, mother Emma, workshop leader Emma, teacher Emma, like they'd all kind of gone. And it was just anxiety.
What was the inner
at
dialogue?
the helm.
What was the inner voice?
Oh gosh.
Was it repetitive? Was it the same thing over
It's
and over
really
again?
hard to
Was
remember.
it quite scattered?
It was just,
about
I think it
everything?
was fear I was never going to get out of it.
So you were actually scared.
I was scared of the anxiety
Yeah.
again. I was scared
Yeah,
of
I'm
it.
not going to get out of this. It's just,
No,
it's just
it's
here
too
again.
much.
Can't do anything about it.
It's too big this time.
Yeah.
It's too big.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was similar to how long after you were stabbed did you kind of hit rock bottom with it all? Was it kind of immediate or was it a bit delayed or?
Well, I'd sort of hit rock bottom before that because of an incident of the health anxiety where I'd convinced myself that I was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And,
health anxiety does that to you.
Yeah. And when you're convinced that you're going to die and you've got an illness that is going to end your life, it was like, I would rather be in control of that and do it myself rather than this thing that I know is going to take me down. So that was the sort of rock bottom when I had to go and tell someone.
And when was that? How old were you then?
I guess it was after uni, so about 24, 25.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, but rock bottom's a good place to start building up.
But they really are, I mean, so if you just say gambling had never become a really big problem. Say it was just, a little bit of a problem. You might have just ticked along and you might still be gambling now. It wouldn't be worth addressing, but sometimes we need these really big rock bottoms so that we make a change, like a
Or
sort
not.
of lasting.
Yeah. Because, there was moments in GA where, you'd see people week after week and then they just never came back.
And then they'd gone back into it.
Or,
maybe. It's like any addiction.
Throwing themselves in front of a train. That happened with one guy.
Wow.
Because, his debt was just so insurmountable. It was just...
Couldn't see another way out. It's like jumping out of a burning building, isn't it?
Yeah. So there was moments where I'm like, look, I can... And also I was looking at guys that had been going to GA for 10, 15 years, guys that would never get themselves out of debt. I remember one guy, just popped into bed now, he goes, I'm phone numbers in debt. Phone numbers.
Wow.
That amount.
That amount of digits.
Yeah. And I was like, I'll never get myself out of it. And I was like, that'll be you, Joe.
Yep.
In 15 years' time, if you don't sort your shit out, that is going to be you. Don't think that you'll, because I used to go in and be like, oh, I've got a handle of this, and then I'd have a blowout or I'd have a great bad gig back in the casino again.
Really?
And then it would start.
That's a big thing you've overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, often they say with, you don't ever overcome, it's always there.
It's always there,
They say your
it's a big thing you live alongside.
Your addiction's always outside doing one-arm press-ups.
I've heard that. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was, again, I look back at that now and I've got a hold of it. There'll be moments now where I'll be like, oh, the voice will come and go and have a gamble, go and have a cheek.
Yeah,
you're on your own,
yeah.
go to the casino.
No
No
one
one here,
will
no one will know.
Yeah.
And now I'm like,
knock yourself out.
There you are. Hello, you're right. And
Got a lot of voices in your head.
A lot of voices.
We all have those.
Yeah, and if you just sit with them, allow them to be there and
communicate with them.
A couple of minutes, they tend to just go and disappear. But
you don't have to act on your thoughts.
Yeah, but when you're in a vulnerable state, you sort of take that and go, oh yeah, let's go and have a gamble, and you bang back in it again. It'd be great because I was self-medicating as well. And it would take you out of all your shit.
Yeah. But that's what any addiction is, isn't it? To sort of, to get rid of the pain, to feel just to feel normal. Yeah. Do you still go to meetings?
No, I don't actually. I've got a friend who still goes to AA. But he's there helping other people. But this is my service to others.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how the 12-step stuff goes, isn't it? You know?
So this is my...
this podcast is your service to others. I get it. Yeah. It's written. I get it.
Someone listens to this and they resonate with it. Or they're like, that's me.
Yeah.
Then if I can get one guy, one girl, one person into if I can get one guy, one girl into, therapy or Gamblers Anonymous, then it's been worth it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for telling that story, Joe. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. Did you know? I've not told you that one.
No. Yeah. I knew about the bits of gambling when you were 9, but I didn't know how it had escalated.
Yeah. I mean, thank God I didn't find the casino at university because that would have been student loan degree over. It was only after uni that I discovered it. I mean, I knew it was there, but I never sort of stepped into it. But as soon as I was in it, I was like, wow, roulette was like the ultimate.
Really?
Yeah. The ultimate high.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm now about to go.
I can see you looking a bit wistful there.
Yeah. But now I'm like, I'm like romanticized about some of the big wins I had. But almost like my brain's like, that was great. Let's get back in there.
Well, I guess it's making a positive association with the dopamine hit that you got at the time. Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, where were we?
Rock bottoms. Rock bottoms. I know, and you've bested me with rock bottoms there. Your multiple rock bottoms.
I've out-traumaed you.
Yeah. I was thinking, this is going to be hard to talk about, this rock bottom, and then we go.
It's like, this is you interviewing me now.
That was kind of the plan. So rock bottom. So I was out of action. And then when I got better, when I came back up from the trapdoor and I was like Emma again, I thought, well, clearly those years of talking therapies and whatever, we haven't got to the root of things. Because, now how's it going to be? A big life event comes up and then I hit rock bottom again. I can't live in fear of that happening again. Big life events are going to happen. I can't risk going back to where I was. I couldn't parent, couldn't work, separated from my husband, but, mercifully we're friends and he came back and helped me, and it meant so much. But I couldn't go back there again. And so I started to look for different types of therapy because, talking therapies had worked for a while. And I'd read this book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, you know it? Mm-hmm. And he talks a lot about EMDR. What's it stand for again? I always get it wrong. Can you say it? Or-
Isn't it eye movement desensitization reprocessing?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's quite a mouthful.
Yeah.
And there's a number of YouTube clips with him talking about it. And it's a trauma therapy. It's WHO and the NHS prescribe it for PTSD and complex PTSD. And so I went to the counselling directory online, BCAP or whatever, and it turns out that there was an EMDR therapist a couple of streets away from me. Like, it was amazing. She was just, walking distance. So the first session I had with Jane, I was kind of livid. Not with her, but with the whole thing. Because I thought, like I did all the things that you're supposed to do. Like I had the therapy and I did the yoga and the meditation and I read all the books and I did all the techniques and still this happened. And anxiety came back worse than ever, like a tsunami. Like I was so angry. Not with her, Jane, sorry. And she said to me that, oh gosh, the question she asked me, she just simply said, so why'd you do all this stuff then? Why'd you do all this self-help stuff then? I said, so I don't get anxious again, obviously, so I don't get anxious. So, it doesn't come back. And she said, so you do it out of fear. And I went, of course I do it out of fear. Like I get up at 5 a.m, do yoga, meditate, get up before the kids, get up, and I do the work. I do all the things. And she then said, but you don't do it out of self-compassion. You don't do it to be kind to yourself. And I was like, well, does it matter if I'm doing it anyway? Does it matter? And she said, yeah, it kind of does. It kind of does. Like your intention really matters. And I realized that all that kind of, that drive of anxiety, I was just applying it to all these like well-being techniques. I was like fighting anxiety with yoga.
Yeah.
It was almost like militant, angry yoga or whatever, or fighting it with, meditation.
Run it off.
Run it off
Outrun
is an
anxiety.
iteration of that. Yeah, but I thought I was doing everything right.
Yeah.
And all the messaging that we get on social media, have a good morning routine, practice meditation, use all the techniques. But if you're using the techniques as weapons, that was the big mistake I was making. And I didn't know I was making because I was using them as weapons.
Yeah. And you just saying that makes me realize that I was doing the same thing, 4 marathons, trying to outrun it, doing the techniques, taking it on. It's like, bring it on, anxiety. I've got a technique for you.
I'll breathe you away.
Breathe you. I'll vape you away.
It's so satisfying making a comedian laugh, I tell you. So satisfying. Right. So I was using it was like I was using it as weapons. And then began, from that moment, I knew I found the right therapist there because she had me, and you need someone who can, corner you like that and, make you rethink where things have gone wrong. And that began one of the most incredible transformational journeys I've had with anxiety.
The intention turnaround.
Well, and the whole process of EMDR.
Yeah.
The intention turnaround was the beginning.
Yeah.
But all of EMDR was about that. It was about generating self-compassion, reparenting myself, changing my relationship with anxiety. That's what it did for me. And it has been transformative. There is no way I could be sitting here with you today talking about anxiety, in this kind of, open platform if I hadn't had EMDR. So I'll talk you through, I'll talk you through kind of a bit of the science, because I know you love the science, Joe, of how things work. Yeah. And actually, I realized in the run up to this podcast that I didn't really know the science, because I never really ask when I go to therapy. Yeah. I'm just like,
give me the therapy.
Just do it. Just fix me. I treat myself like an archaeological dig. I'm like, just dig away, see what you find. I'm just like, help yourselves, knock yourselves Excavate me. That's kind of it. And I don't really ask, what is this really doing to my brain? Which I'm sure you would ask.
Yeah.
When you first started this type of therapy.
I had a bit of EMDR when I got bullied at Panto, and I went in and the lady was like, yeah, this is great therapy called EMDR. It's really good for trauma. Haven't been doing it that long, so you have to bear with me.
That was your therapist saying that?
Yeah. I was a bit like, okay. And then immediately I was like, nah, I don't believe it. I'm not, I went through it, but I was a bit like, the whole time I was like, she hasn't got a clue what she's doing. She hasn't got a clue what she's doing, like waving a finger in front of my face.
It's funny, isn't it? It's finding the right therapist and the right modality. It may not have the same effect for everyone. It might not work for everyone, but it definitely
but I think from the conversations we've had and you've had with me, I think, you know, and I know it's a modality that's helping a lot of young people as well
Yeah, young people
through
can,
art
children
and
can have it.
storytelling.
Yep.
I think it's definitely something I want to go and re-explore with the
Yeah.
right person.
Well, so to prepare for this podcast, because I knew you want to know the science, I got in touch with Jane. I saw her last week. It was really, because I haven't been in therapy for years now, but and I booked a session with her, and it was a bit like I was interviewing her, because I thought, well, I need to know how this stuff works, because Joe's going to want to know how it works, you know. And actually, it was so interesting how she was explaining what EMDR does to us. So she explained that when bad stuff happens to us, you know, like if I think back to my teenage years, you know, failing a driving test, cat dying, boyfriend dumping you, whatever, bad stuff happens to you. People say, you know, time heals. And it's true. We know that with time, we're okay again with certain things. And she says, but it's not time that heals, it's REM sleep that heals. When we sleep and our eyes go into rapid eye movement, that's our brain like reprocessing memories. It's like categorizing them, filing them away, like in a library, or like that Pixar movie Inside Out, like putting them in the right places, getting, you know, dealing with those difficult things that have happened. And then we adapt in our lives. We adapt. We apply for a new driving test, happy being single, whatever it is, but we've adapted to whatever's happened to us. But she said with trauma, like you getting stabbed or me being abducted or whatever else, with trauma, it's too big for our brains to do it through sleep. And our brains don't know where to put this stuff. They haven't got a category for it. There's no library section for it. And so what happens with trauma is it just stays alive within us. And she says it scatters in 3 different directions. So one direction it scatters in is to memory. So it becomes a disturbing memory that we don't want to talk about, don't want to think about. We don't want to let it pass our lips. So it's a disturbing memory. The other area it scatters into is like our emotions and beliefs about ourselves. We might hold emotions about events that have happened to us, and that has developed beliefs about ourselves. So like after your stabbing, what would be the negative belief you held about yourself? Like, you know, I should have handled it better, or, you know,
Yeah,
I should be over it by now.
you're an idiot for wandering off from your mates and making yourself vulnerable. And here we go again, same old story with Joe, just, you know, getting yourself in these stupid, ridiculous situations. So a lot of shame.
A lot of shame. And
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's usually shame-based. It's usually some iteration of, it was my fault. Usually that. And that's a belief system. It was my fault. I'm ashamed of it. That will feed into I can't tell anyone about this. And the other area it scatters into, the third area, is your physical reaction. So you might have, when you think about or talk about this memory, you'll have a physical reaction, shallow breathing, shaking, that kind of stuff, you know, and that will happen. And so you kind of keep it there. It's this story that you don't want to tell.
It gets frozen in the present, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're living with this active, and that's unprocessed trauma. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's unprocessed trauma.
Highly emotional, charged trauma that is present in your body.
It's like gunpowder.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, that gunpowder analogy works quite well, because the way then that we live with trauma is we might be very easily triggered.
Yeah.
The past will hijack the present. Something will remind us of the trauma, and we're overreacting to something in the present. It might come about in the form of addictions. You know, we'll try and suppress this memory with alcohol, drugs, whatever, scrolling, whatever. We'll try and suppress it so we don't have to feel it. Or it could come out, like it did with you and me, in anxiety disorders, like, you know, PTSD. Like, I've never been diagnosed, but probably I think complex PTSD is what's going on with me. You know, probably it would account for all the trapdoors.
Yeah.
But Jane won't diagnose me because she doesn't like labels.
Yes.
But I keep saying it to her.
Yeah, yeah.
She,
give me a label, Jane.
Yeah, give me a label. Diagnose me.
Walk out with a PTSD.
Got it.
Jumper.
I got the certificate.
I've been at the dentist.
She won't do it. And I can see why. You know, we don't want to carry these things. And, you know, mental health isn't a disorder. You know, it's something that fluctuates. You know, I wouldn't say I feel like I've got complex PTSD every single day, you know, but it's something I'm aware that, you know, I've got to really take care of.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's how she explained it to me. And then when we have EMDR, what that does is it helps us reprocess the thing that we couldn't process ourselves at the time. We couldn't do it at the time. And however long ago it was, last week, 40 years ago, whatever, we couldn't do it at the time. And what it helps us do is look at what happened to us from a grounded, compassionate present, and helps us understand that what happened wasn't our fault. And by, going through the motions of a reprocessing session, you leave with a very different outlook, and you're able to talk about what happened to you without getting dysregulated. You don't carry shame about it anymore. So what could help then is if I talk you through one session I
Mhm.
had,
Yeah.
and and that maybe will help people understand what it is. Now, granted, it sounds a bit woo woo, and people might listen to this and go, "What a load of crap,"
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Mhm.
I, a lot of people might have that
But it's helped
reaction
you,
to it.
so,
Massively helped
yeah.
me, and it might help other people. And you can, take what you want, leave the rest, all the rest. So, uh, with EMDR, you don't have to talk about what's happened to you, which, for a lot of people, that's a real positive. You don't have to sit there and tell the story. For some people, they can't get the words past their lips. You don't have to tell the story. You simply she'll say, well, where should we begin? Name a traumatic memory, a difficult memory for you. And immediately, one of my first sessions, I said, well, it was, that time at the airport when we were leaving Australia and I could feel like something was wrong. She goes, okay, let's start there. And at the beginning of the session, they'll ask you 3 questions, kind of 4, but 3 questions. She'll say, right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disturbing is that memory for you? And I think I said like a 9 still. This is a good 40 years later.
Yeah. Wow.
I know. I pushed it right down.
Yeah.
I live with it, you know. It wasn't it wasn't always present. So she would say, yeah, how disturbing. The next question is a bit sad. The next question would be, so what beliefs do you hold about yourself because of that memory? And my beliefs maybe were that I wasn't cared for, I wasn't considered, I was on my own, those kind of things. And maybe then shame that I was damaged because of it, maybe something like that. And she said, well, what would you like to believe about yourself? And I said, well, maybe that I was brave. And then the final question is, okay, where do you feel this in your body? And for me, often I feel it in my limbs, like this kind of, I can feel this sort of cortisol running through my limbs. It's different for everyone. It might be whatever, that's where I feel it. She goes, okay. Now, the eye movement part of EMDR is a little bit of a misnomer in that you don't have to do, I mean, the traditional way, the way that you had it, where you had to follow a pencil or whatever back and forth with your eyes. Some people do that or follow a light. But what she did with me was something called a butterfly hug. And what you do is you cross your arms over yourself and you put your left hand on your right shoulder, your right hand on your left shoulder, and then you just kind of rhythmically tap. So you just kind of rhythmically tap through the session and you'll close your eyes. And what's happening there is it's just bilateral stimulation. So you're working both sides of your brain, and that's what needs to happen to reprocess trauma or memories or whatever else. So it's a way of, making both sides of your brain operate. So I would do that and close my eyes. And what you do then is you kind of watch a movie of this memory. You're kind of looking at the scene and watching the movie of this traumatic event from a distance. And you'll sort of see, goes, okay, we'll start in the airport, go from there, tap, tap, tap. And I watch the movie at the airport. And then she'll stop me and she'll say, okay, so what's going on? And I say, well, I can just see little me instinctively thinking something's not right and feeling scared. And then more details came up, I could remember my mum crying. I remember looking at my little sisters thinking that, well, they don't seem as scared as I do because they were much younger. They were 4 and 1. But I remember looking at little me thinking she looks so scared. And then she would say, can you find any compassion for little you in that moment? And I was like, for sure. And she was like, okay, we'll go with that. So I go back into the memory and I'm tap, tap, tapping. And then something really weird happens. And this is the bit where people go, oh, yeah, whatever. But, this is a repeated experience for me through lots of EMDR sessions, which is that old me or big me, even though I'm only 5'3", big me came into the scene and, walked up to little me at the airport. So like mum, Emma, teacher, Emma, me came into the scene and walked up to little me, little 7-year-old me looking all scared. And this is a bit sad too. And I kind of crouched down. This is the movie going on in my head. I crouched down and I say to little me, like your instincts are right. Like this isn't a holiday. Your life is going to get really tough from here on in, I was saying to little me. But then I said, but you've got all the resources you need within you and you're going to be okay. And then little me just kind of calms down and holds big me's hand. And that's how it kind of ends, you know? And that was the end of the story. And I know it can sound a bit, you know. I said to Jane just last week, you know, what happened to me in EMDR, you know, the memories we went through or whatever, where big me would enter the scene and look after little me. She said, is that normal? Is that what usually happens to people? And she said, well, with childhood trauma, yes. You know, because that's what you needed. You're filling the gaps of the parenting that you didn't get at certain moments of your childhood when you really needed it.
She didn't tell you to do that. You almost
She just
automatically,
said,
instinctively went in as
yes,
the older version of you.
but the prompt was, can you find any compassion for yourself?
Right.
So if maybe it was a traumatic event that happened when I was much older, maybe older me wouldn't have gone in that way. I don't know what would have happened. You know, I think you just, I don't know. I don't have that experience. No. But yeah, that's what happened. And after the sessions ended, she'll say things like, so we have the same questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How disturbing is that memory now? And I say like a 1. Mm-hmm. What beliefs do you hold about yourself? I was brave. For sure I was brave, you know? And then finally, if you, do you feel it anywhere in your body? No.
And how many sessions was that?
That was just one session.
Right. And that was beginning questions.
Yep.
Went through the process.
Tapping.
And then same questions at the end after one session.
That's one session.
Right.
Yeah. And so the thing is with EMDR, it's very cost effective.
Yeah.
Like, you know, she says car accident, 3 sessions, done, you know? It depends. I was there for quite a while. I had quite a lot of stuff to get through. Yeah. And I'm a bit of a therapy junkie.
Yeah. You wanted to be dug up though, didn't you?
I wanted to be dug up. I'm like, get into every dark crevice. Go, Jane. So, you know, I was there for that's longer than usual. Usually I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. So it makes it very cost effective for people. I would never have been able to talk about that event, you know, to you or publicly if I hadn't had EMDR, for sure. Because what happens after EMDR is it's not a traumatic memory anymore. It's just a memory. It's just a thing that happened. It's a library book that's on the shelf. Yeah. You know, it's different. And so, yeah, that was the transformative experience. And then 9 months, you know, I was there for 9 months. This is nearly 4 years ago now. But for sure, like I'm not scared of anxiety anymore. I'm rarely triggered, you know. I barely drink, don't need to, you know. But the crucial thing, I guess, in the context of this podcast is my changed relationship with anxiety. Because what I came to understand is that anxiety for me is just a scared 7-year-old girl. It's just a scared 7-year-old girl that has been for a long time trying to teach me, like trying to teach me the areas I haven't healed, the wounds I haven't seen to, like, and at times she had to scream, you know, especially that last bit. She's like, don't fight me with breathing and yoga. Could you please just hear me? You know, that's how I see it.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, isn't it? And I relate to that in the sense of pushing anxiety away compared to actually being okay, present with anxiety, asking it what it needs.
Yes.
And that's with the thoughts and it's with the feelings.
Yes.
And as soon as it's looked after, as soon as it's accepted and tolerated without defense, it's that moment where I find and found that anxiety starts to loosen its grip.
That is the key. That is the absolute key. Yeah. That you don't push it away. Yeah. That you listen to it, you feel it. If anxiety is a scared 7-year-old me, how could I not look after it? Yeah. How could I not take care of it? And there's stuff I do all the time. I've done it a few times in this podcast, which I place my palm on my chest and almost internally I'm saying, you know, you're safe. I'm here. Yeah. It's just talking to 7-year-old me. Yeah, there we go. You're safe. Yeah. And you compare it to like a little puppy you've done in previous podcast episodes, which is a good analogy as well. You know, it's like this little puppy that needs taken care of. Yeah. You have to take care of it. Yeah. Because you push anxiety away, eventually it'll scream at you. Yeah. Like it did with me. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, Owen O'Kane's, you know, that's his message. To my shame, I haven't read his book, Addicted to Anxiety, but I follow him on Instagram and I know that, you know, that's what he advocates, isn't it? Yeah. You know, to embrace anxiety, accept it, have it as part of you. And I still do all the techniques. You know, I still do yoga, meditation, cold plunges, breathing, you know, challenging negative thoughts. I still do all that to keep myself well. You know, I think it's something I know I have to do.
Yeah, that's
you know?
more sort of maintenance now, isn't
Yeah.
it? Which we all need to do physically, mentally, but it's the deeper work that sometimes needs to be dug up,
Yeah.
seen. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's been such a great conversation. And I remember you said to me right at the beginning about your dad,
Yeah.
and I know you're going out to see him.
I am in February.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think he's going to be really proud of you. And you wanted him to listen to this
Aw.
before you
I
went
will.
out.
I'll send it to him before I
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
And did you listen to all the tapes and read the letters?
Yeah, I've got all the letters still. I've lost the tapes. But yeah, I did. Of course I did when I
Yeah.
was younger, when I was
Yeah.
a kid.
I was just thought, went back then, I was like, your mum didn't like hold that away
No,
from
no,
you.
no, no, no.
She allowed you
No.
to listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It was tricky stuff.
Mm.
But no, that's my story, Joe.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember telling it to you once after work in a school car park somewhere,
Yeah.
and you saying, "Oh, this would make a great podcast," and me going, "Yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do it." But in the run up, my goodness, you know, it's not easy telling the truth about ourselves, our mental health, or difficult experiences we've had.
Yeah.
But you know, that I think that's the good you're doing with this podcast, you know, because by telling stories about ourselves, not only does it open up possibilities for real human connection, you know, like you feel like an anxiety ally to me now, you know, in the last couple of months since we've opened up about experiences we've had. But even, you know, if people listen to this and they're not ready to tell their story, I think it's it's huge. It's so comforting for people to know that other people struggle,
Yeah.
adults struggle, other teenagers struggle, you know, and that there's ways out of it. You know, anxiety is not a life sentence, and it's not who you are.
No.
You know, it's a storm that will come and go, but you're not the storm.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
it'll come and go. But
Thank
I
you
think
very much
that's
for
all I
coming.
have to say about that.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Great way to end. Thanks, Emma.
That's okay.